as you know, this is my opportunity to bring you up to date with any of the important things that have happened since last we met, and any of the overriding issues that we may be addressing that would be of interest or concern to you, and particularly for everyone, but particularly for you as council members, since you will be the people who help us interface with the extramural community, and you're likely to be asked questions about any and all issues that are relevant to us. So we want to make certain that we bring you as up-to-date information as we can to prepare you for that, so that you can provide the best answers. So this is that interesting time of year in the Capitol when there are Congress has been very busy on the Hill. We have a lot of activity in both the House and the Senate. There are a lot of activity from the White House. And this is normally what we consider or refer to as our budget time. And so this is the time when the hearings are held. This is the time when information is requested. And towards the end of this, and we don't have it yet, but towards the end of this, the culmination of all these activities does result in a budget, which for us is a public law. And that's where we receive our appropriation and any advice or earmarks that may be included from the Congress or from the administration. So just looking, and we don't, as I say, we do not have a budget at this moment, but looking at this recent history, you can see that it is a little hard to predict, because we have been in a period of time when we've had almost flat funding or slight increases. But this year we've been on a continuing resolution until the end of April, and we did, following that, receive a 2017 budget, which was really which was a bigger bump, an increase in funding than we had expected. There is always a lot of discussion that goes on around the budgets, and a lot of speculation. And as always in speculation, it can range from really dour predictions to really rosy predictions. And most of the time, the actual happening is somewhere in between. But this one actually was somewhat better than we had expected. So you can see that, barring any rescissions or taps, that our budget has now peaked over the 150 million mark, which has been a landmark we've been hoping for and kind of aiming for mentally for a while now. And so that was very good news. It is also, it's good news on several. First of all, having the additional funds is extremely good news, but also it does give us a larger base. And as you know, if the budget is calculated on the base budget that you currently have, having a larger base is better, because then if you're looking at a percent increase, your percent is larger. So as we have in the early days figured out, a small percent of a small percent is a small amount of money, but a large percent of a small amount of money is still not always a large percent. So we're really pleased to be growing and pleased to be moving in that direction. As you can see also from this chart, this was May 5th that we received the budget. And if you look backward from 15 and 16, you can see that we really had a much delayed budget this year compared to the previous 2 years. What that means for us and for you, other than the uncertainty, is that when we're on a continuing resolution, we're unable to start important new initiatives. So we can maintain something that is in process, but we have difficulty starting any very large new initiatives. And so that does limit what we can do. Plus, the other piece is, from a realistic point of view, it slows us down in making grant awards, because we have to imagine or make an educated guess of what the budget is, and we tend to be a little more conservative since we're not allowed to overspend. And we also don't want to spend a lot of money funding a large number of grants in the first or second segment of the year and then have limited funds for the third cycle. So we try to calculate all of this. And our budget officer, Kevin Wilson, who's sitting over there looking kind of pained as I describe this, knows very well that we do a lot of modeling, but we understand that we do the best we can, but it's hard to be completely on the mark. So just just to let you know what some of the issues are, that the implications of this. Now, when we get the actual appropriation, what does it look like in terms of allocation? This really changes very little, but I show you simply so that it does reinforce the point that whatever funds we get, roughly 80+% of those funds go out to extramural funding for either research or training support. So that's RPGs, centers, other research, which is mostly Ks, training, and also R&D, which is more than half of that really is related to things that are for support of extramural funding. Our intramural budget remains modest compared to the average intramural budget, which is 10% across the NIH. And our RMS, which is the overhead that you all experience at your universities, is still a relatively modest 11%. And that does fund all of the reviews that take place, all of the review staff, all of the programmatic things that happen, and all of the grants management, which for those of you who have anything that is complicated in terms of your grant, you probably appreciate how many phone calls and how much time that takes, because it's a lot of time from your standpoint, and from our standpoint, it's multiplied by 300 or 400, depending on how many applications are actually funded. So it is a fairly labor-intensive 11%, and we do try to hold it as low as possible, being realistic about what the expectations are to be able to meet what your needs are in the extramural community. So moving through from the department to us, some of the things that have happened since last we met that are important to mention. We, as you know, as part of HHS, our neighborhood includes FDA and CDC and so on, and AHRQ, and a number of others, but those are the ones that mostly you are familiar with. And so the Food and Drug FDA Commissioner, Scott Gottlieb, has been confirmed just this past, about 2 weeks ago now, as the commissioner. He's an internist, and he also is someone who worked extensively in the George W. Bush administration. His area of expertise is related to clinical issues, safety issues, and regulation of clinical issues. So he is, it'll be interesting to see what new initiatives he's had. He's really just arrived, so we don't have a good sense of what he plans to do yet. Also, you have probably heard that the Surgeon General, Acting Surgeon General has been appointed, and that's Sylvia Trent-Adams, who many of you already know from when she was the chief nurse in the department. She is someone who's very well known for her work at HRSA and also in the HIV/AIDS, Bureau of HIV/AIDS, and she was instrumental in helping the major public health effort to control Ebola, and which really involved a number of field trips and a very substantial deployment of personnel. So we're really pleased. She's we've had a chance to talk a couple of times since she's been doing that, and she really is excited and enjoying the opportunity. Also, Gopal Khanna has just been appointed as the director of the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. He has an interesting background. He also has been very involved in monitoring healthcare systems. He actually has an MBA. He's not a scientist or clinician by background, but he's been very involved in the state systems, particularly, most recently, Minnesota. And so we, since I've spoken to a few people at AHRQ. I have not yet met with him, but since he's just arrived, that's all the information that I have on Gopal Khanna. We were saddened, as I know you all were, at the loss of Faye Abdullah recently. Faye is a legend in the field. She really, her many accomplishments would take us all afternoon to mention, but she really was the person who essentially wrote the first book on nursing research and exhorted people to do research and how important it was to provide an evidence base. And she made many contributions throughout her career. She was quite fierce and courageous and pioneering, and she was the first deputy surgeon general appointed by COOP. She was the deputy surgeon general who was the first first female and first nurse as Deputy Surgeon General, and that was from 1981 to 1989, so it was a full term. She was very active in that role. She was deployed virtually all over the country to get, as Coop would say, impossible things done. And so she really enjoyed her career in the public health service. She enjoyed being able to contribute to nursing. She retired from the public health service after a very long and illustrious career. And then she became the founder and founding dean of the Uniformed Services School of Nursing across the street. And so she really made a number of contributions to the public health and also to nursing science and nursing education as well. So she will be, she'll be greatly missed, but her accomplishments will extend well into the next century and beyond. So it's a wonderful legacy that she does leave. So moving a little bit closer to us, I wanted to bring to your attention the CTSAs, most of you know the Clinical and Translational Science Awards, out of the NCAT Center at NIH. This is a group that is really primarily concerned with infrastructure and infrastructure kinds of awards. And the CTSAs have now done something which will benefit those of you who have a CTSA on your, in your geographical area, in that they now have worked and have a program internally in the CTSA to develop a single IRB model. As you know, we are requiring single IRBs for studies moving forward. And so I think this is a really good model in that they have tested this out. So any of you that happen to have one of these in the environment, it will, you can, from the understanding is that you should be able to use that IRB, and so that will save you a lot of time and energy that you can use that to get your Institutional Review Board approvals to use. So I would suggest that it's a pretty good model to look at to see how it's done, even though this is a very specific example. Another area that will help moving forward in terms of clinical research is that the NIH has been working very closely with FDA to try to develop some protocols, some templates, some approaches which will help to provide some uniformity for clinical trials, to try to design trials that will be more easily translated. Those of you who went to the director's lecture this morning heard a lot about translating translating, and one of them is designing the study so that it can be translated, whether it's because of ease of carrying it out or cost or whatever. And so that's really one of the things that this committee is doing. And it's also trying to help determine how a study might be designed so that it would be easier to get the FDA approval. Very often what we have found in the past is at NIH that the studies will be successful and that we'll be really excited about the results, but it still takes a really long time to get FDA approval. And so this really is focusing on phase 2 and 3 clinical trials, but what the idea is that it will help to facilitate so that those trials can then be moved forward with FDA approval in less time before patients can benefit. We also are doing an experiment looking at other ways of optimizing the funds that we have. There's nothing quite like funding constraints to have you look at how the funds are being spent and make certain that you are really paying attention. And so we've been looking at a number of metrics, things related to productivity, things related to publications, et cetera. And so we are working on a grant citation index that will look, and some of you may have read about this in the papers. I won't talk too much about it because Larry Tabak, who is the principal deputy director, we'll have a short open session tomorrow morning, and he will come and talk a little bit about this and what it means and how we envision this playing out. But it is really, there are two issues here. One is looking at where do the funds go, whether they are all concentrated in certain areas or whether they are more broadly disseminated. But it really is as much about looking at productivity, and we're looking at the productivity tending to decrease over time with increased resources and as an average, as a mean, not every individual. So it's looking at productivity, and also we have looked at the age trends, and it looks at, and I know we've heard this from council, that at the 60 and over, that the curve shows that those careers are still escalating and doing well. The early stage investigators tend to be kind of in a trough. They're holding steady, but it's a pretty low trough. And the ones in the middle tend to just really be going down. And so looking at that and looking at our next generation of researchers, there have been concerns raised. So Larry will talk, in more detail about this tomorrow. But really, it's optimizing our stewardship, but also trying in a way that looks not just simply at dollars, but also looks at what are we accomplishing and what are we doing to plan for the future. Once again, I want to bring your attention to the fact that we have a number of announcements for funding announcements and funding opportunities, not just within our institute or the other institutes at NIH, but some that are NIH-wide. And when you look at these, you can see that these are NIH-sponsored funding opportunities that are very much resonating with our mission. And so these are actually announcements that we might have made, but they're NIH-wide announcements. One of them, actually, the one on pain, is something that we did design as an individual institute initiative a number of years ago. It's been redesigned, but as a member of the pain consortium, we took it to the pain consortium, and they felt that it should be a trans-NIH. So that's an example of where one institute may start with an idea, and the trans-NIH groups tend to often increase the opportunities across NIH for all disciplines, and that's a good example of that. Now, moving a bit closer to home to NINR, we held our roundtable. Once a year, we gather together the representatives of groups who identify research as a main plank in their organization. And so we met this year on March 2nd and 3rd, and the issue addressed, this is a very long title, but anyway, I couldn't figure out a way to shorten it, and I didn't want to editorialize and rewrite, but it's preparing neuroscientists for sustainable careers, and it's scientific innovations and transdisciplinary collaborations. And a very lively discussion was held, and a number of ideas were circulated, and a summary of that will be published in the upcoming months. We also want to bring to your attention the Science of Caregiving Summit that we are holding on August 7th and 8th of this year. The co-chairs, if you have suggestions for that, are Marguerite Kearney and Doug Hussey. This has been in process for a while. There's a lot of work going on this, and we're very excited about it. It's a trans-NIH initiative. Many other institutes are joining us in this effort and underscoring its importance. Our keynote speaker will be Judy Woodruff, who, as you know from the evening PBS NewsHour, is the single anchor now. She was a co-anchor, and she is very, very committed to health and to caregiving from her own family issues. So we're very excited that she's coming. She's enthusiastic and looking forward to it. And so the website on here is where you register if you want to come. And please do tell people we have room. We are having it in NACNR, so it'll be we have ample room for people to come. It will also be archived, but we are very excited about it. Judy is the keynote speaker, but also Gail Hunt, who is the president of the Caregiving Alliance, will also be a symposium, running one of the symposiums. And also Laura Gitlin, who many of you probably know from her very extensive work in caregiving from Hopkins, will also be part of this. So we're excited and enthusiastic, and we just think it's going to be terrific. It is caregiving across the lifespan. It's not specifically focused on patients with dementia, because we are involved with the Aging Institute, National Institute on Aging, in another conference that will address that piece. So this will not address that, but it really is going to involve the public, and so it will involve all groups other than the so-called formal caregivers. So please put that on your calendar and try to attend if you can, or at least to tune into it. The other event that I want to bring to your attention, which has been archived, is the Symptom Science Research Symposium. This was presented last month. This is was an all-day symposium that was put on by our Intramural program, our Intramural scientists. And it highlighted the science that they're doing, but also the partnerships that we have across the NIH and extramural as well. So it really was a good way to showcase the science, but also to showcase the number of collaborations and the future activities that can be done. So that was very well received. We have about 500 people at that, so either in person or online. And so I would advise, particularly for the council members, that you'll probably want to pull that up and see at least part of that program because it really was very well received, and the people who were there were very excited, and we've gotten a lot of positive comments from across the campus too. It's sort of a way of reintroducing us to the neighborhood. You know, things change around here rather rapidly sometimes, so we want to make sure that we keep doing those introductions and make those points. Another meeting that we held, which was also quite productive, several of you were there, was the center directors meeting. Now we have annual meetings of the center directors, and this is an opportunity to bring the center directors and their teams, as many as they want to bring, the senior people typically, or the younger investigators, to come together to talk about what they're doing, the projects that they're working on, to be able to network, to tell us what's happening, lessons learned, what are the new things that they're doing. But also, this is the group, recall, that is doing the experiment on the common data elements, which we believe is going to be a very important initiative moving forward. And it will enable us to deal with the criticism that our studies are successful, but they have small ends. And so to the extent that we can pool this data, it will be extremely helpful moving forward. And so I want to, and the names are all on the website and there are too many for me to mention, but I do want to commend the center directors for the extensive work that they are doing to be able to engage in this experiment and to be able to move it forward. Change is never easy. Nancy Redeker and Shirley Moore are two of the mainstays of this group, and if there's anyone else in the room that I missed, let me know. But we really have this over time. We've focused on sustainability, and over time the centers have developed strategies for being able to move forward. And so we're very excited about the Common Data Element project. This particular meeting, the focus was on advancing symptom and self-management science through precision health. So there was more of a focus on precision health and how we fit into that, and what are some of the questions that we want to address. Because precision health moving forward, we have to get the cohort. It's very much in development. So it's a concept now, and we're moving it forward, particularly with the cohort of patients being enrolled. But then we have to go from there. So we can't say they're not including us if we don't have ideas of what questions we want to ask and what we want them to do for us. So we have to really step up to the plate on that. Just an FYI, the two most recent director's lectures, other than today, last December and January, or the fall and January, Linda Aiken and Sandra Millen Underwood are now on the website, and Kate Lorig's talk this morning will be shortly. I'd like also to bring your attention to something new on the website that we think you'll enjoy. That is it's meant for us, but it's also meant for others who are not familiar with our history. But it is a timeline, a sort of milestones in NINR history. And so it has a number of pictures representing activities during these years, and you can click on them, and then it will take you to additional information and update you on any particular event or year that you might be interested in. And so we really do have, Doug Hussey, Melissa Barrett, and her whole team to thank for doing this. And we are also open to any suggestions. Does it work, or is there something you would change? Now, this one I'm particularly proud of, because this is a response to if we do this, maybe Dr. Grady will stop complaining. But I know some of you have said that the website is, I hear this a bit, that it's a little hard to get around on, to navigate, that it has everything you ever wanted to know. Well, most of the things you wanted to know. But that finding and getting there is sometimes complicated. And so I've been saying, I think so too, and I'm having trouble, and So we said, how about we just put a button on there, put an area, what's new? So you can go to the what's new place right away and find out everything that's new. And then if you have a routine inquiry, you can go to some of the routine places. So anyway, once again, thanks to Doug and Melissa and her team, who I guess I wore them down, but I was responding to some of your comments as well. And so anyway, but I do think, but let us know, because I think it really is a lot easier to use, and I hope you think so too. And if you don't, or if we all don't, then just let us know how we can change that and make that easier, because we really have so much information to provide, and it's intended to be helpful, and it's intended to save you time and effort. And if it isn't in a form that is really readily accessible to you, it's not going to do its job. So we are committed to that, and so please let us know. We also have, you may recall our discussing this before, but just some background. We've been working on the genomic blueprint for nursing science, and that is a joint effort with NINR, NCI, and NHGRI, the Genome Institute. And so this work has been going on with literally a cast of 20 or 30 people over the years. And it resulted in the blueprint that was published that you're familiar with, which was based on our previous strategic plan. There is also a website now that is available. And so now there's a matrix, which is based on all of the work that has been done. And there's been a lot of public input on this. But now this is posted to get public comment on the draft of Genomic Knowledge Matrix for Nurse Scientists. So we ask you, please do look at this, tell all the experts in your environment, take a look at this and see, what do you think, how effective is this, how is this going to be useful, what should be added, what should be taken away, is there another way to do this? So we are very anxious to get your comments on this. And so please, all the SGI grads have been given the alert. That's their homework assignment. But please do let us know, weigh in. The comments you can email to that, or you can just send them to the information, NINR info, to let us know as well. We just really want to get your advice and comments on this. You're looking at concepts as we move forward, new concepts for the upcoming sessions. But this, so just to review the concepts that are operative for NINR, so you see that we have 5 that are fairly recent that actually will be operative. One is running out. The Palliative Care Research Cooperative is up for renewal, but the others are operative until 2020. Our graduate partnership program, recall that is the partnership that we have between the schools of nursing, doctoral programs, and the NINR intramural program. And so that students who are enrolled in a doctoral program, when they finish their coursework, can come to the NINR intramural program and do their research here on campus with an NINR mentor and their doctoral dissertation mentor from the university. So they're not here to stay, but they come to take advantage of the campus and what it has to offer that will enrich their research program. We also have mentors from other institutes as well. So we do enlist people to fill out that mentorship roster as appropriate. So the application period is opening in August, and I would say, when you go back, think about who in your program might benefit from this. It's a terrific way to get a very solid grounding in the kind of research that the intramural program does. It's also because we are fortunate that we have a campus here where people do interact quite readily in the intramural program. You may hear a lot about silos and such, but actually it's a little bit easier because they're not part of a department and we don't have quite the same kinds of constraints that some of the college campuses do. So, I mean, you know, we all have our constraints, but it is one of the things that I do notice about the graduates of the any of the intramural programs is that they tend to learn collaboration and networking here at a level that's way beyond what the experience might be that they would get in other settings, because it's sort of, you know, well, you saw that we're about 6% of our budget, but most of the institutes are about 10%. So really, it's sort of collaborate to survive. You know, you can do a lot more together, but it is really important to be able to share and to help each other. So it is something that is a good learning experience while they're here. We are engaging in a new postdoc partnership with Robert Wood Johnson. The Future Nurse Scholars Program that Robert Wood Johnson has is now moving from the pre-doc to the postdoc. And so there are several options for doing a postdoc. And one of those is the option that you can come to NINR. So it is a partnership with Robert Wood Johnson, and the program is housed at Penn. So it really is a Penn Robert Wood Johnson partnership, and we are partnering with them. So we're very excited. We're looking forward to hopefully getting our first postdoc this year, but we'll have to wait and see. But it's an exciting opportunity. I also want to announce with some excitement, this I know probably looks a little bit like going to the hardware store because this is a very early photo of moving into the lab. Last time when you came, those of you that were on council and did the tour of the intramural program, you saw the room that we were going to move into. And then you were quickly hustled away somewhere else because there really wasn't anything much in there except empty space. Now, however, we have moved in, and literally it's doubled our space, which is long overdue, but it's very exciting. And so we focus our September council on the intramural program, and so you will hear from the intramural scientists, but we also will have tours available in the morning for those of you who are interested in seeing it. So you can see the new space, but I had Ann Cashin, scientific director, sent me this photo. She was very excited about it, and I thought, oh, this is exciting. We should tell the council about this. And as I looked at the photo, I thought, well, you know, it doesn't look glamorous, but it does look sort of like, anyway. But we're very, very pleased. And of course, the people working in there, the postdocs and the scientists are thrilled because the space has literally doubled. And we're not talking about an enormous mansion of space, but you know, it's sort of like going from a one-bedroom to a two-bedroom apartment. But anyway, it's working, and so it's a lot more fun even to work there now. So just a few updates from the intramural program. So Jessica Gill, whom you have heard from, is one of our tenure track scientists and also our Lasker scholar. And Jessica works, as you recall, in traumatic brain injury and PTS. She has now been selected to lead the biomarker efforts for the CARE Consortium, which is a consortium, an alliance of research and education, but it's really about determining the causes and what can we do about head injury. And this is an interesting thing. It is an alliance or a consortium between the NCAA and Division of Defense, or Department of Defense rather. And so it's pretty interesting because those of you that heard the talk this morning, it's kind of a way of looking at the symptoms across a variety of circumstances. But the idea that, it's really exciting that the idea that someone who gets a head injury in football may be similar in ways in terms of what happens, the response, than somebody who gets a head injury in a war-type situation. This is a very large consortium, so it's really, it's an honor, it's a tribute to her to be asked to do this, and she is very excited about it, and you'll probably hear about that in the fall. Also, Leo Saligan, who you recall, works in the area of fatigue, particularly patients who are receiving radiation therapy for cancer. And Leo was selected and did a really terrific job of doing grand rounds in the clinical center about a month ago. And that's really an honor to be asked because, these are tenure tracks, and so they're fairly young in the professional trajectory. And so it really is an honor to be asked. And so Leo did the grand rounds in May, and Jessica is being asked to do grand rounds in September. So those will be archived, and you can access those. And this is something that actually I just learned about myself recently. There's so many things going on. But we are contacted frequently by a company who, and this the link will be available to you but online, but we are contacted because of the uniqueness of our science, that the measuring tools that we use in our studies are quite different and are thought to be potentially beneficial to others, but not as well known. And so we've been contacted on more than one occasion now to talk about those and to provide explanations and to try to provide an educational video for people to be able to use these. And so both Wendy Henderson, who works on addressing GI symptoms of distress, and Leo, who I just mentioned previously, have been asked in this last quartile to provide that information and to talk about that. So I think that's pretty exciting that their work is so unique that it's the ways of measuring are in demand. So moving yet closer, we have a few changes in staff, additions. Wei Quinn Lee, whom many of you know from study section ahead in our scientific review branch, has just been appointed as the chief of the scientific review branch. So he'll be here and you can talk to him. But Wei Quinn came to us from the Lombardi Cancer Center, where he was engaged in research, and also from Virginia Commonwealth University before that. But he has been with us for several years now and has just taken this new position. We also are happy to welcome a new program director, Sarah Yoon, in the area of wellness. Sarah comes to us with her background, brings something new to us that we really are pleased to have. In her background, besides her nursing background, is in epidemiology. And so she has worked with, most recently, the NHANES project that many of you know, that's really a data-driven, it's an entire agency just collecting data and looking at it and analyzing it. And so we're really pleased to have her on board. She most recently comes to us from the Center for Scientific Review, where she was a scientific review administrator. And so she has recently joined us just about the time of the last council. So she was here, but we didn't have a chance to get a picture of her to put in here. But we're happy to welcome her on board. She also will be managing the women's health portfolio for us, as well as part of the wellness. So we have handouts available at the door. And I also have to say, I know Marguerite will be embarrassed if I mention this, but I also wanted to say that she did receive an award from University of Augusta. It has a new name now, and I apologize because we don't have this written down. But some of the faculty are here, and we are happy that you're here to listen to our council, and also pleased that she received this honor because we also appreciate her contributions, and it's nice that others do as well. So with that, we have handouts available at the door for additional information. And as always, anything I talk about, we have more information available. If you didn't catch the links, we're happy to give it to you. And I think the slides are in your folder. If not, we can get those links or any other additional information that I've mentioned that you would like to know more about. We're happy to do that. So with that, I will close my comments and we will move forward with the rest of the program this afternoon.